Chairman, General Guillot, as ballistic missile threats from North Korea and Iran continue to advance, do you believe that it would be strategically worthwhile to construct a third homeland missile defense site at the DoD and Congress's chosen East Coast location at Fort Drum, New York?
Congresswoman, I'm aware that there was a recent assessment that said that such a site was not an operational necessity. However, as an operational commander that watches very closely the advances that our adversaries are making, primarily Iran and even more so North Korea, I think that it's important for me as the commander to have continually assessed the threat and see if there are any changes in the threat environment that would necessitate additional capabilities to affect the homeland. And so I would, sorry.
General, in my office, when you were kind enough to visit, you said it would be strategically worthwhile and you supported the construction. I understand the assessment process, but as you and I spoke in my office, you said this would be strategically worthwhile, particularly as we're considering threats not just of today, but of the future as well.
Yes, Congressman. If the assessment came back that those threats, I thought it would be worthwhile to build that site, a site.
What would an operational requirement for a third homeland missile defense site look like?
Congresswoman, that would depend on the threat, but I think dispersal away from the sites that we have now, so we don't have all of our proverbial eggs in one basket, would be very important. And the other would be to make sure that it is located somewhere in the continental United States where it would have the kinematic responsiveness to intercept threats that are coming from a different avenue.
And Fort Drum meets those requirements?
Well, I would...
That's the DoD's position. That's Congress's position, that Fort Drum is, in fact, the location of a potential East Coast missile defense site. You are aware of that?
I am aware of that, yes, ma'am.
And it meets those requirements?
Well, it does. What I think I'm answering a different question is, with future capabilities that we may have, I think we would have to assess that. But based on the previous, yes, I know that Fort Drum was the primary location.
Great. And you understand if and when Congress establishes a requirement for a third homeland missile defense site on the East Coast, you understand that it's the DoD's responsibility to execute that requirement?
I would be the strongest advocate to execute that requirement if the threat required it. Yes, ma'am.
And then shifting gears here, upstate New York, in addition to being home to Fort Drum in my district, we also are home to another key Arctic unit, the New York Air National Guard 109th Airlift Wing. And the 109th Airlift Wing operates the LC-130Hs, or known as the Ski Birds. These planes, as you know, are the only platform in the world that can provide critical logistical support in and around the Arctic. Yet they are at the very end of their operational capability. Do you believe that the LC-130s have enabled the U.S. to maintain a strategic presence and lead in the Arctic?
Congresswoman, yes, without a doubt. In fact, just this past week, they were in our AOR up at Arctic Edge and Ice Camp operation, performing that unique capability.
We believe, and this is a bipartisan issue for members of the New York delegation, I just authored a letter with my colleague Paul Tonko, so bipartisan support about the urgent need for their recapitalization. So I would refer you to that. We'll make sure your office has a copy of that, but that's very important to maintain our leadership strategically in the Arctic region. Yield back.
Thank you. Representative Norcross.
Thank you, Chairman.